Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we take you on a deeper dive into all things kettlebells. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and he's Roger Parks. And today, we're going to help you scroll the internet. Well, not physically or literally, but help you decide whether it's something you should click on, listen to, or if you're completely wasting your time. Now, obviously, we're all going to be affected by clickbait. That's how you ended up with that tank top you're wearing, right, Roger?
Wow.
All right.
Really?
Anyways, more or less, we want to kind of help break down some of the common things that pop up in your various feeds, if you will. And I hate that term. And I feel like a less of a person when I say I've got to check my feed for, cattle get feed. And trust me, I grew up in Nebraska. All right, Roger, kettlebell
Yeah.
clickbait. We all see it. We're all going to get into it. What are we hoping to have some people walk away with it by the end of this episode?
Better understanding of which media you should engage with. And if you do engage with a post, what are you really looking to get out of it? We've been retooling and shifting the viewer of this podcast or the listener of this podcast. And we started off, thinking we were going to go and positively influence coaches and give them some feedback, give them a different perspective. Unfortunately, every coach everywhere knows everything and they don't have anything more to learn.
Yeah.
So we have found it a lot more fulfilling to work with regular people who are just beginning with kettlebells or people who are passionate about them. But the difference, this category of people seems to be, because they don't have the fitness background, more susceptible to the clickbait. And this is what we want to talk about. What are some things? One, if you see a post, identify it right away. This is clickbait. Doesn't mean that all clickbait is bad. Some of it's useful, right? Some of it's amusing, some of it's entertaining, but understand that's what you're clicking when you're clicking it. And we want you to immediately have a sense of skepticism.
Yeah. And for full transparency, we often, or I wouldn't say often, but sometimes post things that will want you to actually click on it. So you click it and hopefully like what you see or hear and gain something out of it. You know what I mean? And it's just the nature of social media or YouTube or any of these things. You want to say, oh, I'm curious about this, but does everything add value? No. And we want to break down a few of those things, right?
Well, and that is the point. Clickbait often is giving you information for the sake of getting you to interact with it rather than offering you something of value. And sometimes there are titles that are very clickbaity, but then the video itself is informative and well done. And sometimes you just want your thumbnail to be kind of sensational in order to get people to engage. And that's anyone who's putting out content has to deal with that particular dilemma. Do I put out good quality information, or do I put out what the people want? Most of the time, what people want is they want something sensational. They just want to be told what to do. What is the best kettlebell workout to do?
It's kettlebell swings, of course. And I heard that on the internet this week.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll get into that.
So definitely. So we post once a week. So if you find value in this, be sure to follow us on social media and to subscribe on our YouTube channel. That really helps us. It really helps us get this good stuff into other people's worlds. Let's just start with these S tier lists. You mentioned these to me, Roger, and I've seen them here and there. I don't fall for these S tier lists, but the S tier list, I asked you, in fact, what does that even mean? Where does it come from? And you said, oh, I think it's from gaming. And we're probably dating ourselves a little bit here by asking this question. But yes, it does come from gaming. And it's just basically a way to rank and file more or less movements or weapons from video games. The S tier. And do you want me to explain what each tier is real quick?
Yeah, briefly. I think this is relevant.
All right. So the S tier is the top, believe it or not. And it's exceptional, best of the best, dominant, or most effective. A tier is right below that. That's excellent, strong choices or options. B tier is good. It's above average, but with some limitations. C tier is average or balanced, but nothing special, like my high school career. D tier is below average, often weaker or less effective. And F tier is poor and least desirable. Not don't do, or don't use, but is poor and least desirable. All right. So there you go. There's your tiers, Roger. And now, how do we apply this in kettlebells? Like,
Well, the general application of this in the fitness world is people wanting to, they talk about optimal. What is the
mm,
best? What are the best moves that you can possibly do? And generally, these lists are not that there's no value in them, but when you see this tiered list, it is absolute through and through clickbait. It wants you to engage, and it gives you a little teaser. What's the best? It's playing on your insecurity. Am I doing any of the wrong exercises?
yeah, did
Right.
that fall into the F tier? Oh dear God.
So usually these are done by more of the what I'll call the science based community online, and sometimes they have a study backing them, sometimes they don't. But what they all tend to have in common is they don't offer context in many situations, and this is the problem with them. But one of the reasons why I thought it was useful to read that list itself is everything was useful on that list except for the D tier and the F tier, really. So everything, S all the way through C, you know average results, average exercises, your regular, hey, let's get some work done. These exercises are still fantastic. There's still a lot of these are the bread and butter of your routine. So don't overlook those. We go back to this idea of minimum effective dose. What is the what is the least you can do to still get results? And if you are, let's say this tier list is relevant. So a little thought experiment. Let's say it actually is accurate. What you're often led to is, oh, I've got to only do the S tier exercises. That's all I'm doing. Well, guess what? If these exercises are the most effective, they're also going to be the most taxing, which means that you're going to have to take more time to recover from them. That's going to take a toll in your training. That's going to limit the amount of volume you can do. It might cause a plateau sooner rather than later. It might cause some injuries, maybe just a little bit of fatigue and burnout. We just did an episode on recovery. So if you're only doing the S tier moves, you're doing a bunch of really really hard stuff day in and day out. So you want to mix that up. So even if this list is relevant, which most of the time it's not, it's lacking context, which is something you're really going to want to look at. Even if it is relevant and accurate, you're not going to want to do all of these moves all the time. We were chatting, getting ready for this, and we applied this we applied this list to law enforcement, right? So let's say you're
Yeah.
a law enforcement officer and you see someone breaking the law. Uh, you're
You're
probably
gonna
going to
jump right to S tier and
you're gonna
blast
say,
them.
yeah, you're not gonna pull the shotgun out of the car and start shooting, or the assault rifle. You're probably gonna
Yeah.
talk first, right?
Yeah.
Hey, don't do that. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Okay, have a good day.
But that's only
Problem solved.
that's a B tier solution, Roger, and we can't even mess with that. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you want to go through trying to de-escalate. Maybe use pepper spray or handcuffs, or maybe have
Yeah.
you and your partner can tackle the would-be
Divide and
offender.
conquer. Yeah.
But
I mean,
this mentality is like you're gonna pull out your gun and start shooting. Like everything doesn't need to be overkill. It doesn't need to be the best of the best. That's the wrong mentality to have. And understand that when you are clicking on the best, understand that that's the type of thinking that you're engaging in. It's a trap. Doesn't mean the information's useless, but go into it understanding that
it's context
maybe
dependent.
misapplying. Everything's
Yeah.
context dependent.
Yeah, it's what's the application for the S tier. So if the snatch falls in the S tier, which is also clickbait, that the snatch is like the czar of all kettlebell exercises, none shall be better. And maybe that's true for snatching and for passing a snatch test, but it's certainly not going to get my half body weight press overhead just snatching alone. And so you want to consider those things. And you sort of alluded to the next thing on the list, Roger, which is these best exercise or worst exercise lists. And at the time of recording this, there's a really popular one going around about how the kettlebell swing is not great by a very popular guy on the internet who admittedly takes steroids. And, he's a smart guy in some respects, and in his lane is revered. But these best exercise lists are also probably following, well, at least these clickbaity ones, I would say, Roger, and you can elaborate more, but if it's the best exercise is, we'll just use the kettlebell swing. It's a kettlebell swing. Well, there's no context to that either. It's just, yeah, that's the best exercise. And I'm going to click a like, and now you've achieved exactly what value you can get out of that. Somebody's 5-second opinion.
Sure, and that's, again, that's why this is clickbait. These posts are usually not very well thought out. They're quick. They're inflammatory. They're playing on a sense of insecurity. They want people to respond to something, and in many cases, especially when you put something out, this particular list was putting kettlebell swings on the list of worst exercises you can possibly do, and I think it's silly. There really was almost no argument. The argument behind it was false, at least some of it, and it wasn't very thorough, but it achieved its objective. We're talking about it. Okay,
A lot
other
of people are
people,
talking about it.
a lot of people are,
In
and
the
and
kettlebell world, was that confirmation bias? We're all in on it.
sure, I've seen people do response videos, and the reality is, I haven't seen a good response video yet. The response videos had errors. And that's another type of clickbait that we're not going to get into today. We've done response videos. Sometimes they're useful, but the point is, these exercises, it's the same logic as the tier list. Training has a few components. If you break down what training is, we'll call it movement with a goal in mind. Okay. If you don't have a goal in mind, if your goal isn't specific, it's just general exercise, then none of this matters. Train, have fun, stay safe, cool. But if you're training for a particular thing, if you have a goal, then this is where this is going to be really relevant. In order to train, you need to have stress, and that stress needs to be adequate. It needs to be relevant. So it
To the
needs to
goal.
do the thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's relevant to the goal, right?
Absolutely. It needs to do the thing that you're trying to do. If, for example, I want to boost my deadlift and I'm doing a bunch of bicep curls. Now, if for whatever reason doing biceps is chewing up my elbows, okay, and I need to do some curls and that makes my elbows feel better, then that might be something that helps me with my deadlift goal. But the reality is, if I start doing a bunch of bicep curls and I'm not doing deadlifts, then that's not going to be very relevant. Okay. It needs to be adequate. It has to reach a level where you, as a biological system, can't ignore the stimulus or the stress. If you can, then it doesn't work. And then, of course, you have to recover from it, and then you have to have enough time for the adaptation to occur. So this is basically the training process. And if you achieve those objectives, if your stress is relevant to the goal, and if it's adequate to get your body's attention, if it's something that you can recover from, and you give yourself enough time for these changes to happen, that is all that matters. And
And
going
thus
back to
would be the best exercise then.
exactly right, or that would be a good exercise.
Okay.
And going back to the previous category, if I can use a C tier exercise in order to get where I need to go, then I can save my B tier and above exercises for when things get hard or when things get sticky. So,
Yeah,
this
when you get
is
into like a plateau or something, right? That's when you
sure,
can bust that out. And
absolutely. Or if I get closer to reaching my goal.
that's a great example too, Roger, because the C tier again is average or balanced, but nothing special. Like most training, right? It's
Yep.
it's it's the way it should be, really, right? Average, balanced, nothing special, and then you break out those other things when you need a plateau or when you want to
Show
reach
up.
different sites. Yeah, peak.
Show up and do
What?
your work, and we're not advocating that you do exercises that don't work. What we're saying is that most of these exercises have something that's really kind of specialized or interesting about them, and it's not what you need. And if it is what you need, it's going to be what you need in a specific instance. Use it then. It's like your secret weapon, right? Don't
Mhm.
use your secret weapon. Even going back to video games, if you've ever played video games, if you've got a special, you want to save it for the right time because
Yeah,
you get more value
that's
out of it.
what was that? Mike Tyson's Punch Out with Lil Mac. He got those little
Yeah.
stars. If you use them
Uh-huh.
every time, they didn't work on certain people. So what was the point if you didn't punch the guy in the belly with the Band-Aid? You know what I mean?
Exactly right.
So you can't use your secret weapon every time. Otherwise, it's not a secret anymore. Keep these secrets. Shh. All
All
right.
right, Creeper.
Sometimes
Moving on.
I know. Sometimes a secret weapon might even fall into some of that S tier category, but it is a kettlebell complex. And now the kettlebell complex post is the clickbait. That's the clickbait right there. And the reason, so if you check out episode 12, we talk about kettlebell complex, or excuse me, episode 11, I think we talk about kettlebell complexes, but it's they're there to show you a bunch of look at me wild and crazy stuff, right? Uh, but is it going to get you what you need as far as training? How else is this a clickbait post, Roger?
I think they're usually clickbaity because it's very simple, it's easy to engage, and most of the captions will say, "Torch yourself with this complex. One kettlebell in 24 minutes." Some, the complex you're training is missing. It doesn't mean that posting complexes or looking at complexes or any other form of work or even done for you workout even doesn't mean that these things are bad. There can be value and many of them it's regular people or even coaches like, oh hey, I did this today, it was fun, check it
Yeah.
out. That's an awesome post. We're not saying there's no value there, but the the idea that there's something special about this complex that's going to do something that another complex or another type of workout isn't going to do is probably just not true. I excuse me. I saw a I saw a post the other day. It's like, take your strength to the next level with this complex. And I'm immediately thinking like, well, why are you doing a complex if you're trying to get stronger?
Yeah.
Like that's
I hope that
probably
complex is clean and press.
it's probably not what you need to be doing. So the complexes are fine, but before if you do engage with these, ask yourself the question: is my goal generally either strength endurance or endurance? Is it a very kind of what we would call as coaches GPP, general physical preparedness? So the idea behind GPP is general physical preparedness, and complexes can help with that. If you need some not really high end strength, some strength endurance, some general endurance, totally cool. Complexes can help you out with that. So if you encounter one, that's one of the first things you want to think about. Is this even relevant to my goal? And if so, how are the moves strung together? Are these exercises I enjoy doing? Are these things that I need to do? And if you do have questions about complexes, go check out the last episode because we break down ways to evaluate those. But the idea that this particular complex is going to get you results better than another one is probably not.
But if anybody says, "Hey, this is the best complex you can do," then you're that's the clickbait. It's not the best. There's no best. It's what is appropriate at the time and for you and all these things.
Sure, and the nature of them, a lot of the best complexes that people come back to are really simple. They're usually just two or three movements, and the people who are posting these other complexes are trying to get some sort of notoriety, as though the internet is going to give them an award, like, "Oh my God, you discovered this complex! You're going
Oh,
to get a trophy in the mail."
I never seen those strung together like this. And in fact,
Sure,
this very morning, I trained somebody with a classic complex. It's 2 cleans, 1 press, and 3 squats with double 28s. And the reason being is we're working on increasing our press. But he also does a fighting technique called Krav Maga. So I wanted him to have a little bit of resistance in this sort of like combined manner, right? And it
sure.
worked. And he loved it. And guess what? It was a clean, a press, and a squat for love of
So
God.
simple. So generally, when you're seeing complexes, you're looking at clickbait. Doesn't mean you shouldn't check them out. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't necessarily try them. Just know this is what you're looking at. There are intelligent ways to use these. Make sure that this makes sense with your training. And if you do get stuck, watch the other episode.
Yeah, for real. I like to look at the complex videos, and I also like to do some of them sometimes. Whatever. All right, look what I can do, Roger. I can take this heavy ass kettlebell. It's a 92 kg. You love that term, 92 kg. And I'm going to swing it and clean it and squat it and all that stuff. Look what I can do. So what's
So
wrong with
the,
these? What's wrong with what I said?
so the look what I can do posts are generally feats of strength, and let's even just get hyper fixated on heavy because that's the trend right now. The trend is let me go as heavy as possible, and there seems to be no respect to form. You are demonstrating, I guess, a little bit of tissue tolerance, some stubbornness, the ability to pick up heavy things and not break. But doing heavy work sometimes gives people proof of concept. Every now and then, I don't post much anymore, but back when I was posting on Instagram before I got sick of it, I would post doing something heavy because I wanted people to see, hey, kettlebells make you stronger. Proof of concept. I know what I'm doing. I'm a good coach because I can lift heavy things. Is that true? Not necessarily. There
Yeah,
may be
yeah,
some
that's what I was gonna
correlation
say.
there.
Does that mean you should, if somebody goes on there and grabs the wildest, heaviest kettlebell you've ever seen and does something with it that, like you said, maybe suspect to form, and yet they have, let's say, 1 million subscribers or followers, does that mean they're a good coach just because they can do that?
The answer clearly is no. And in fact, in some of the at least two of the response videos, the one we referenced earlier, there were really heavy kettlebells used, and I saw very subpar technique in both of them. And it's like, I'm
You're
part of
not
this
proving
community.
points.
Don't defend me. Like,
Yeah,
if this is how you're going to defend me, don't defend me. Like, just
yeah.
acknowledge that he's right, we're wrong. We're going to do something else. But don't defend me by using an overweighted kettlebell swing that you don't do well. Swings are very specific, whether it's a swing or it's not a swing, whether it's an awkward, clumsy, my back's about to go out kind of lift, or a swing. So when you see stuff that is very heavily weighted, you can appreciate in some cases that, okay, it's heavy, this is a strong person, but is it being demonstrated with proper skill? Is it being demonstrated in a proper context? Does it make sense in your training? And more than anything, I want people to get from this that we don't rush out and think, oh, I need to go heavier. Back to this idea of minimum effective dose, do as little as you can get away with. If you're using a 16 kilo bell and it's getting you results, then keep using it. If it stops, then go up. But this idea that heavy is better, I came across on YouTube the other day. Someone, I think it was either a single or a double 44 kilo press. That's heavy. But then when I
That's
looked at the
really heavy.
technique, I think it was like 12 reps. I was like, well, actually, there were 0 reps. There were 0 strict presses of this weight. There were lots of push presses. There were
Yeah,
some clumsy, sloppy push presses that looked dangerous. But this guy who was doing it, really great shape. And this is part of the one of the deceptive things that you should also take away from it is, does going really heavy get you this kind of physique? And the answer is no in most cases. So, understand that these posts, the look what I can do posts, that's great. Maybe look at them and, cool, I wish I could do that at some point. I want to lift this bell, or be happy that someone got a PR. Totally cool. But don't immediately think that heavy is better and that you need to start incorporating that into your routine, because this is more often when I have clients who see these posts, should I be going heavier? Like, no. Like, he couldn't handle that weight.
yeah. If we're gonna get specific about this guy's form, then yeah, there's probably a reason why you shouldn't do that as well either. And I guess you could argue that every single one of these is a "look what I can do" post. You know what I'm
You
saying?
you could. Again,
But
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think the big takeaway from there, what you shared was, um, heavy isn't always better, and that it can be if that's your goal, and go at your pace. It takes time to get heavy. Heavy is relative, right? Heavy for
Sure.
somebody could be that 16 kilogram. So heavy for another person could be a 48 kilogram. But you want to take your time to get there and do the proper steps so that, again, your tissues can handle it and you're not blowing your back out, your arms are poking out of your skin afterwards. What is that? The humerus bone, Roger? Poking through your elbow skin. What is that called? This is called an enos, I believe, is the elbow skin. Is it, if your humerus is poking out of your enos, then you have a problem, and
Yeah,
that means you went too heavy.
it's a problem.
All right. And finally, let's finish this off with this is classic. Don't do this or do that. Don't do X or do this post. if you're doing this, you're doing it wrong. How can we gain something good out of those posts? How do we know? We don't need to describe what makes it bad necessarily, but how do we know if it's a good don't do this post? What are we looking for?
Well, first of all, we'll look for a setup. We'll look for context. If you are looking to do this is your goal. If you are looking to increase your strength and you want to press heavier bells, consider this technique in order to facilitate that. So we talk, for example, when we give this type of advice, we try to be as basic as possible, which is one of the reasons why we like to use physics in our coaching, because the physics won't change. Physics will be applied differently to different bodies, different subject entirely. But when we talk about keeping the bell over your foot, we are not assuming that you're able to do that. Maybe there are problems where it needs to drift one way or the other. We're not assuming that this is what you want to do. But if I were to make a post that says, if you're looking to do a heavy press, then keep your bell over your foot, or don't let the bell drift away from your foot, that would be reasonable if I go in and then I explain what the concept is that I'm trying to do. And, I would go in and I would talk about forces and moment arms and things like that. If it's a longer post, I might get into leaning, how I'd get past the sticking point, why when I lean, do I still want the bell to stay over the foot and not drift out? There are different nuances to that, but I would talk about a goal, I would talk about a context, and I would make sure that this is your problem, that this is a technique issue, that you're not dealing with an injury, you're not dealing with a tissue tolerance or just general lack of strength. So if someone is offering something like this can be great, especially if you're having a problem with your press. But the people who do this well generally don't present it in these really hyperbolic terms. Generally speaking, people who are good coaches understand how context dependent everything else is, and they don't state it unless it's just in the thumbnail. They might say, hey, is this holding back your press? Going back to press, letting your elbow move out too soon. Okay, before the bell has gone up, if you open up almost immediately when you press, meaning you're swinging your elbow out, then you are creating a moment arm between the bell and the shoulder that is close to 90 degrees in a very weak range of motion. This is going to make a press very, very difficult. So if that's something that's holding you back, then you're going to want to listen. You're going to want to pay attention. You're going to want to get the bell a little higher. And once the knuckles pass the eyes, usually that's sufficient space. That is high enough for you to begin to go into your spiral, for example, when you press, because that is when your muscles are stronger. You're not in end ranges. So when your muscles are really short or really long, or if from a physics perspective, when that moment arm is at 90 degrees, that's when things are going to be harder. So once you get the knuckles or the handle above your eyes, that's usually a good time to start opening up, because you can't go straight up with a hardstyle press. Hardstyle press will spiral behind you, and you will have to open the elbow up a little bit. So you want to do that at the right time when the bell is physically less heavy. And now you've got a context. This is your goal. This is the problem. This is how you solve it. So that would be a perfectly reasonable goal, and that's going to apply equally to everybody. Now, will it apply equally to everybody? No.
Yeah.
The physics are going to apply,
depends.
but if you've got longer arms, for example, this is going to be a harder problem for you.
Yeah.
If your humerus were half the length that it is, you don't need to go very far from your shoulder in order to get a bell overhead. But if your
Yeah.
humerus were twice as long, then you've got to do something with the length of your bone. That's going to be a harder lift. My point is that many of these will tell you you're doing something wrong, will tell you the right way to do it. They don't give you a context. They don't give you a way to evaluate. They don't remind you, hey, test and retest. See how this feels. I don't know any tips that are going to apply equally well to everybody. So,
Except for maybe use your legs.
Oh, if you're doing ballistics,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
really anything else. But
I would say, yeah.
but again, what if
the water there, Roger, but we do have that one
well,
tip.
but
But
hold
that's from
on.
years
So
of don't do this and don't do that pose.
but when we're getting into tips, I mean, there's a really simple argument against that, is that what if that's not your problem?
That's true. What if that's not
You
your
know,
problem? You're right. Then that post doesn't add the value that you need. You can't just
it doesn't.
squeeze your butt all the way through every kettlebell exercise.
No, it doesn't work. So you want to understand, like, hey, is this a problem? But a good post or a good piece of content should engage you through a process on how to solve some problems. And generally, the people who make the best videos in these formats are physical therapists.
Yeah, and they're not going to be that 7-second attention span that we're all seemingly doomed to these days. So I would even say that this kettlebell clickbait, if you're falling for it, you're not giving yourself the due to make yourself better at kettlebells, because you're probably in these things for minuscule amounts of time and you're not getting that evaluation. So what coach just pointed out there in that process of what you would look for in a good don't do this or do this type of post is going to take at least a minute, at least a minute. You know what I mean? And probably longer, to be honest. We've done these posts, we've done these videos, and these are like 5-minute things that will get you over some humps if it's the solution that you need. But just to assume, oh, this person, yeah, they're shredded and they have a lot of followers and they said don't do that, then that's what I'm going to do, and this is going to take away my back pain. You know, something like that.
It is fascinating when I start working with a new client, especially a kettlebell only client. Most of the names they know are not the fantastic names in the industry. They very rarely know the people who have really even kind of set the pace for everybody else. It's the popular people. And these people are very convincing. They're very affirmative. This is the right way. That's the wrong way. You know, this is how you set up for a swing. Your feet need to be pointed this way. You've got to hinge. You've got to start with the
You've got
bell
to
here.
karate chop your hips, for the love of God.
Exactly. And there are some fantastic people who have been coaching for a long, long time. They don't have they generally don't have the presence. But one of the reasons they don't have the presence online is because of the short attention spans and people who are investing too much time in the clickbait. You're falling for this stuff and you're clicking on these videos and you get a guy like we were talking about earlier who's got a lot of really good stuff to say, who is spending time making jokes that would kill at a junior high school talent show and making clickbait rather than having like real substantive conversations the way he's capable of. And
Yeah.
this is one of the situations where I do think that we all collectively need to blame ourselves rather than blaming the people.
Who made the post?
This guy in particular, but many of these influencers are making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So when your income is dependent upon likes and clicks and views and comments and all of that stuff, you want to put out a bunch of content, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, and you want it to be sensational because you want people to lose their minds and click on this. And suddenly this video's got millions of views, and wow, look at my check this month. It's awesome.
Pretty sweet. That's a great gig.
It
It's
is.
a lot
But
of work.
what if we could do that by actually putting out some good content? And there are plenty of people on YouTube who do that, just to be clear.
Totally.
There
Yeah.
there are plenty of great content creators who have integrity, make great videos, have nuance, are engaging. And at this point, they're giving away so much free, valuable information because they happen to be lucky enough to be getting paid to share it, which is fantastic. But
Yeah. So,
these are
so we're
not the
not.
people we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess it's sort of like I think with clickbait, it's sort of like that old that hustler argument. What was your Larry Flint's in court and the judge, they're trying to describe what is porn, and the judge is like, I know it when I see it. Well, I guess you could maybe say the same thing about clickbait. You're gonna know it
I,
when you see it.
I think that's fair. Again, it's they're generally it's designed to get you to click, but there's also no intention of value. There's no value in There's no
It's not
value
marriage
in
material. Is that what you're saying?
there's no value in the content or the sharing of ideas. It's just designed to get you to engage and on a very superficial level. So if you do click one of these things and you find that the only way you can engage is superficial, cool. I mean, I've seen some funny clickbait stuff and it's mindless, but this is not that. You know, there's a difference between clicking on gym fails, which are hilarious,
Yeah,
and
absolutely hilarious.
and clicking on, oh, this is Coach so and so who, told me to do this complex with an 80-kilo bell. I just need this one bell in 43 minutes and I'll get shredded like him.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, everybody. I think if you don't know by now, and if you did listen all the way till here, please, please, that's got to be worth something. So share a review and what value you found on this, because this definitely, even though the title of this episode will probably have been clickbait, led you to listen.
See what we did there?
The old bait and switch. You thought it was going to be clickbait, but it was valuable. Haha, the reverse bait and switch. Anyways, so just do what you got to do. Download the Bells app and be smarter about your scrolling. Anything else, Coach?
Nope.
All right. Stay strong, everybody.